All right, everybody, welcome. Sorry for the delay here. I'm just getting set up, getting everything ready. I want to make sure everybody who gets in here or everybody who wants to get in here can get in here. Can everybody hear me? Does everything look and sound okay? Welcome to the stream. Thank you for being here. We've got a busy day today as it is NFP day, which happens once every month on the first Friday, and it is basically a look at the official numbers of the U.S. unemployment, right? So unemployment is a very, very important figure when it comes to economic data. It also has clues as to what GDP growth could look like, and maybe even longer term, what inflation and interest rates could be set to do in the future. So it has a huge impact on the value of a currency, as well as sort of gauging the overall health of a major economy. Okay, cool. You guys can hear me? Awesome. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to the stream. Happy to have you here. We're going to be doing some analysis here. We've got NFP starting in about 40 minutes or so. So we've got a good bit of time here just to look at the charts, talk about setups, and talk about what could happen here with the report. So what I'll do here is I'm going to pull up everything so we can take a quick look and talk about the US dollar, talk about maybe any of the other major currency pair crosses that could be impacted by this, and let's get into it. Okay, so let me flip over my view so you guys can see this. Let's go to Forex Factory for starters. So yes, as I was mentioning, today is non-farm employment change. You guys may have noticed I'm here a little bit earlier than I usually am, but the idea is because the news comes out in about 40 minutes here. So again, like I said, we have unemployment rates and numbers coming out for the U.S. The big one that we're going to watch for is these numbers here, which is basically the employment change. So they're forecasting right now at 652,000 new jobs created. If this job numbers comes out and it is higher than expected, then that is honestly or obviously very good for the economy and hence the US dollar. Now, on the flip side, if numbers come out less than expected, if this number comes up and basically it looks red, then that would be considered bearish or not so great for the US dollar. Now, last month, we actually had something very interesting happen. We had a forecast of 197,000 new jobs created, and we actually came out with 379. So we beat by quite a bit. And this was a very nice bullish bounce for the US dollar. And in fact, there were some great trades off of the back of that I was able to capture, just going with the strong news and some of the catalyst that comes with it. So you might be asking, well, why does this matter? Well, for me, technical analysis is a helpful tool, but it is not the only thing to look at if I'm going to be taking a trade. Understanding that, strong reports, strong jobs numbers, and a shift in sentiment on the US dollar could drive the US dollar higher for many, many months. Right? So if you have a lot of jobs created, then that is obviously good for the economy because it improves, people are out there doing stuff, and that it potentially improves GDP, which causes growth in an economy. So what we're going to be looking for today is we're going to be watching to see what this figure comes out to be. We're going to look at some setups and some ways to trade NFP, some ways to look at setups as they arise due to this number. So I should say, for those of you guys who are interested in news trading, for me, I'm not going to trade the release. Like, I know what a lot of people will do, and I'm going to say this now, and I might say it again later to sort of warn people of this. A lot of people, what they will do is that when the news is about to hit the floor, they will put pending orders on their account. So what that means is, like, let's say price is, it's traveling back and forth. Actually, it'd probably be easier if I just showed it on the chart really quick. So what some people will do with the news before it happens is they will go and they'll put pending orders above and below price. So they'll put a buy stop here and a sell stop here, and they say whatever happens, it's going to be fine because I can just jump into the trade. So if it goes shooting up, they'll enter in and it'll keep going because the news is going to spike it and they can make money. Or if it goes down, they can spike down with it and try and make the money on the downside. But let me tell you why this is a terrible idea. At least in my view, with almost every broker that I've ever come across. The problem is that brokers, they don't want to let you have brokers have to, their job is to take the other side of your trade. And so the problem with this is that they increase the spreads dramatically, right? So what they do is that you wanted to take a buy trade on the news right here. And if you guys don't know what I'm saying, let me just tell you guys about this strategy. So people put a buy stop and a sell stop above and below price. This is a very common strategy before news. And they do it right before the news comes out. And then they say, hey, whatever the price does, I'll just join the move. And it sounds really good on paper. It sounds like it could really, really work because you're like, oh, whatever it does, I'll just capture the move. I'll just go with it and jump into the trade right away, and the order will get me in, right? The problem is that when this happens, when the news spikes, almost every broker, if not every broker, they widen their spreads dramatically. So they make it that if you wanted to buy this here, you actually buy it here. And if you wanted to sell it here, you actually sell it here. Why do they do that? To protect themselves. They're in the business of providing liquidity. They don't want to take the other side of your trade and put themselves at massive risk, because they know that back in the early 2000s, maybe even prior to a little bit more than 2010 back, people were doing this and making like free money. It was like the easiest thing in the world. You would just sell as it comes down here, and as the news came out, the spike would be so big that you would just get filled and you would make money. That is not a strategy anymore that works. So please be aware of that. I know traders who do that. And the thing is, the reason that doesn't work is because, number one, it's cheeky. You think you're outsmarting the markets, but the brokers know what people are up to. And number two, I have personal experience from when I was like a newer trader in the Forex market. I tried this strategy. I made a bunch of money, and then I lost a lot of money, more than even what I started with, because I was trying to fool around with news like this. So please don't do it. It's a very, very dangerous strategy. But I just wanted to talk about that for a moment for those of you guys who think they're going to outsmart the market and try and do that. Just be careful. Anyways, so what we can do is, like I said, we have unemployment numbers coming out here in about 35 minutes, and this is going to tell us what the jobs rate is, how many, percentage, how much of the U.S. is unemployed. You can see this is these are the two data points that I look at the most. The percentage of total workforce that is unemployed and actively seeking employment during the previous month. So that's going to be this figure here. If that drops, that's good. If that rises, it's bad. It's a little bit confusing maybe for people who are just getting into this, but more jobs is good, and less unemployment is good. So that's what we're looking for in terms of a bullish US dollar case. On the flip side, more unemployment is bad, and less jobs created is also bad. So those are the things we're going to look for. Now, what we can do is while we wait for the news, we can talk about some of the setups that could arise due to NFP. I think that for starters, what we'll do is we will look at the euro against the US dollar, and we'll go through some of the other major currencies that have to do with the US dollar, so stay tuned on that. I think we have some very interesting things to talk about in terms of gold, the dollar yen, and the dollar Swiss, so stay with me. We'll get there, and then we'll talk all about those as they come along. So stay with me. We've got, again, like the release is happening in, what is that? It's about 30 minutes now, so stick around with me, and we'll talk all about some trade ideas and setups for this. Okay, so the main one that I want to talk about with the euro dollar is that, let's say that we get some US dollar news and it comes out as very weak. Let's say that US dollar news comes out and unemployment is worse than expected and there's less jobs created, and that causes a bearish move on the US dollar. Well, remember, when we're talking about currency pairs, we are crossing two major economies against one another and saying which one is outperforming. Well, if the U.S. jobs numbers come out as very poor, relatively speaking, the euro could actually push higher, okay? And this is the idea, is if the U.S. dollar, we're watching for this news release, if this news comes out as bearish, the euro could continue to rally. Now, just because if the U.S. numbers come out, it is not like the only telltale sign of where the US dollar is going in the next several months. There are many factors that drive a currency value up or down, but it is something that can cause spikes. And for me, as a bear on the euro and a bull on the US dollar, if this happens, I'm actually fine with it because it could create some opportunities for sell setups that I really like. And the two that I'm really interested on the euro, we're looking at the 4-hour chart. I really like the idea of a pullback to 1.85. If that comes into play, I very well could be looking to pick up some shorts on the euro dollar in favor of the overall downtrend. So the idea here is using the news to sort of cause a move that we really want. So like what I mentioned is if price were to get bullish on the euro dollar, that would mean we had some bearish US dollar news. Well, if that happens, then that could actually set up some of the nicer trade setups that I've been waiting for. So I use news personally. I trade after the news. So I after the news comes in, I process the numbers in terms of, what does this bode for the US economy? And then I try and match that up with technical setups that I see. So when we're looking at the euro dollar, a spike here on the US dollar to the downside could lead the euro dollar to actually move up. And in that case, could give me a setup to look for long biased on the US dollar and sort of going with the downtrend here, but selling the euro, so selling euro dollar here. Okay, so that's the idea. And then we will talk about maybe some more currency pairs, but this is one that I'm really watching because we're already sort of seeing coming into the news. This is another thing to note is that the last multiple 4-hour candles have been pretty bullish for the euro. Now, what does that mean? Well, a lot of times what we see prior to NFP and prior to bigger news releases is we see price giving back. We see price sort of just pulling back, just pausing for a moment before the release. Why? Because traders are waiting to see what the numbers are, just like I am, to see how that could potentially impact the overall trade here. So like I said, I think the trade here to the downside is still valid, but using that pullback could be really interesting to look for overall setups to the downside there on Euro USD. Pato, do me a favor, please don't spam the chat. I can't see other people's messages when it's just one person. I had to put you in timeout. But anyways, the idea here, good point, Nick, nowadays price goes up and down both ways. With the news, yes, it definitely can. So many viewers and so few likes. Come on, folks, show some love. Yeah, do me a favor if you guys are enjoying the stream, make sure to like it down below. It does really help. Let's see what else. Welcome, Theo. Welcome to the stream. Happy to have you here. Why don't you trade NFP on lower time frames? Paulo, mostly because I'm a swing trader anyways, but we will take a look at maybe the 1-hour chart here as well, just going into the news. I think that's a good idea. So, like I said, sort of before the news, we do have this pullback happening, which is sort of interesting. Sometimes it's a pullback just before another spike lower, but sometimes it is just a pullback because maybe people anticipate the jobs numbers to come out and shoot this way, right? Less than expected for US dollar. So we could see that. We'll see what price decides to do. I think that the still major area that I see is this area here at 1.185. So that's what I'm going to talk about or watch for on the euro. Let's talk about the pound here. I'm going to start fresh with the pound let's look at the 4-hour chart and then we'll talk about maybe the 1-hour chart as well. All right, so let's look at the pound dollar. So GBP USD is in a really interesting spot right as we're talking about it. Actually, you can see this zone that we've been talking about on streams for the last several days at resistance has been sort of a zone that's been tested by the bulls and the bears. So what we have is on the higher time frames, we do sort of have this strong trend to the upside for the pound. However, on the lower time frames, we have this sort of counter trend or this sort of this channel to the downside. Let me show you what I mean. On the daily chart, check it out. Daily chart, we're in a strong uptrend, right? overall, we're above that 200-day moving average. Are we above the 50? We're just at the 50 moving average. And you can see, for the most part, a nice trend to the upside on the pound lately as people sort of favor the UK economy as it bounces back very, very strong. Their vaccine rollout was perceived as very good. Their numbers have been pretty impressive. And so we've seen this uptrend. However, most recently, we've seen sort of a shift in that concept there, and it to me looks like we may be headed to maybe retest that 200-day moving average. Okay, so this is the daily chart. This is a big top-down look. We'll go to the 4-hour chart and talk about that a little bit closer. So I mentioned that right now we are testing a pretty key zone of supply. So this zone right here, you can see it held as support, tried to support, broke down, held as resistance, and now we're testing it again. And this is a big spot because we don't know if it's going to break out here or if it's going to just straight go down, because although technicals, like I said, are important, fundamental news can totally just break technicals. So, if you have if you're looking at a support zone and the news comes out as incredibly bearish, no one cares about your support zone anymore, right? It can change dramatically. So when we're looking at the pound dollar at this resistance level, I'm going to just be cautious. I'm not going to jump to conclusions that it's just going to drop like crazy. I'm going to sit here and watch what the news comes out, and then we're going to look at it. So let me show you that. If we were to break bullish, and this is the case that I probably like more. So we're looking at GBP, USD, and let's say that US dollar news today, the jobs numbers come out and they are worse than expected. So we get a disappointing figure. If that comes out as bearish for the US dollar, keep an eye on this trade setup, you guys. So let's say that we get a break to the upside, right? The news comes out, the spike comes to the upside on pound dollar, and then we get some sort of pullback. That could be a beautiful setup to just go with, like I said, that daily uptrend. So this is a real pivotal moment for the pound dollar because it could lead to sort of the next wave of buy pressure back to the previous high, or it could be a continuation to the downside, in which case things could get really interesting if we were to start pulling back further and more aggressively on that 4-hour and the daily chart. So keep an eye on that. I think the pound dollar is a very interesting candidate today because we are definitely at a level of interest. Multiple times this price has bounced off of it, and so I'm not going to assume that it's going to go down just because we're at a resistance point, because again, we have that big loaded news coming around the corner. Now, sometimes NFP is a very aggressive spike, and sometimes it's not. When we're looking at news, what you're going to want to check for, and what we usually see in the form of a spike very quickly, we usually see price come out, or sorry, not price, the figures come out, and then basically if they miss by a lot, or if, like, let's say the expectation, again, we can pull it up just for sake of making this simpler. So let's say that we right now, the numbers are expected to come out at 652,000 jobs. Now, if that number comes out as much different than what is forecasted by analysts, that could cause the price to move a lot. Usually when you see the biggest spikes on NFP news releases, it's because numbers come out really different than what is expected. I can still remember, you guys, when the Bank of Canada, I was watching a news release for the Bank of Canada, right? And the numbers came out, and they actually hiked rates, I think. They hiked rates in the Bank of Canada. This was like over a year ago. It's like probably 2 years ago. They hiked rates unexpectedly, and that chart moved so high. It moved so strongly bullish, and it was just incredible. So most of the time, news is pretty sort of as expected, but every once in a while you get these incredible spikes when numbers are very different, and it can be quite volatile. So that's why sometimes people say, be careful trading around news, because if it comes out as incredibly bearish for the dollar, we could see one of these, right? We could see a quick move up on the 4-hour chart. Let's drop it down to the 1-hour chart just for a second here. We'll chat about what we have going on. So again, there's your resistance level. You've got sellers hanging out here and potentially trying to sell this thing again here. Like I said, it's a pivotal moment here. We did sort of buy into the end of the week here in anticipation for these news. So it seems like the market is either just trying to take profits on some of the sells that it's been taking, or the market sort of thinks that unemployment numbers are going to be disappointing because, again, if the pound is rising relative to the dollar, that means the U.S. dollar is perceived as not as bullish. Stretch Life says, so then nobody can really know how to trade NFP, or do you have a little time to place a trade once the news drops? Stretch Life, so there is no way you're going to beat the news. There is no way. Let me tell you what you're up against. If you want to try and trade the spike, if you want to, some traders love to trade the spike, right? They try and jump into the trade right away. The reason you will never, ever beat the spike is because you're going up against the best computers and the smartest minds connected with the fastest internet connections to the data that releases. So if you're going to try and beat the spike, if you're going to try and get in before it spikes, no chance. There's just no way to beat it because you're going up against people who pay millions and millions of dollars to have access to the data microseconds before everybody else. By the time we get the data, the computers are like, they're on vacation, right? Because the algos that trade the news release, they're so fast and they're so much more equipped than what we have as retail traders. It doesn't mean that you can't trade it. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you can't do anything with the news. What I'm saying is that trying to beat the spike is incredibly dangerous. Stretch Life says, thank you. I got lucky last time and just won out of luck because I forgot what day it was. Well, that's, it happens every once in a while. I still will hold on to my positions. Let me see if I can show you guys my Aussie yen trade. Oh, I'm not logged in. I don't want to show my password or anything on the live stream, but maybe next time. But I have an Aussie yen trade that's going pretty decently well. I bought it right around here. You can see price came up. Still in that trade. It's pulled back a little bit here. Again, same sort of concept, even with some of these yen pairs. Even though this has nothing to do with the US dollar, most currencies will be in some way indirectly or directly impacted by NFP numbers because it gives an outlook as to what the global values are. So I want to add one more thing to your comment, Stretch Life. So trading the spike is, in my view, that's sort of a losing game. However, it doesn't mean that there's nothing we can do. What I view NFP numbers as in unemployment is I factor it all into my overall directional bias. So the thing is, although yes, news comes out and it spikes, it's still being processed for a day, multiple days later, right? Analysts, market traders, there's a lot of factors that go into the future price of the US dollar, for example. Let's take a look at dollar yen. This one pulling back just a bit here as well on the 4-hour chart. So like I said, if the news comes out and it's a big miss or it's a big surprise, yes, it will cause a giant spike, but that's not the only move. The move can happen for a month afterwards, right? We could get a giant shift on the US dollar train, and then you've got these bazillionaire hedge funds and institutions that want to change their positions. That can take them a long time. Our advantage as retail traders, in my view, is that we're small and our accounts, we can get in and out of trades very quickly. But if you're a ginormous investor and you have literally like billions of dollars that you want to move in and out of markets, you have to do it in pieces. You can't do it all at one time. You can't just be like, okay, yeah, sell $5 bazillion worth of the US dollar today, because the dollar would spike dramatically and you wouldn't be able to get any good pricing, right? So that's the disadvantage of being such a big trader, is that you have to move a little bit slower. And for us, we're like jet skis on the water and they're like ginormous yachts. So just things to think about. We're looking at the dollar yen. The dollar yen is pulling back a little bit here. We do have some levels that I want to point out. So this previous level of supply is definitely one to watch if price does pull back further. So if we get bearish US dollar news, if price comes down here, very well could look for some opportunities. I'd be interested to see, I actually would prefer to see some US dollar news that comes out bearish, because it could give me some trade setups in some of the major pairs that I trade. However, again, so the reason, more context behind that is I'm usually or mostly a bull on the US dollar at this time. And so bearish news, as long as it's, if it creates some sort of volatility that could get me into some trade setups, I'm happy for that as well. So yeah, watching dollar yen is a one to keep an eye on, because we've been on sort of this just absolute runaway train with dollar yen. I do think that it will have a major pullback at some point, but as you guys know, if you watch my streams and you watch my channel, I don't like to sort of try and call tops and bottoms or try and call a reversal unless I'm very, very, I have a very good reason for it. Dollar yen, this is a pair that I am bullish on and I would love to be in on the long side. However, I'm waiting for an opportunity to be so. So in that case, the opportunity could come with the news. So some setups that I like on dollar yen. I like a pullback here to 109.3 roughly, right here. I like that as a potential buy, just going with this overall momentum. This is sort of an aggressive buy because yes, we are pretty extended, but I do like the idea that dollar yen could continue to rally. The reason is because the U.S. economy is bouncing back quite strong, and the the Japanese yen is sort of lagging behind. And so I think that uptrend should continue for the time being. Sure, it could change, and if it changes, we'll just adapt. But the idea is that just going with that trend until it's no longer there. Let's talk about dollar Swiss here as well. So this previous top looked really interesting. So this area offered a lot of resistance the past time around. Then we sort of consolidated. We caught our footing, and then we shot right through that level, right? As we shot through that level, that sort of now creates this supply becomes demand concept. So as price, breaks through here, what was not a good bargain for buyers is now arguably a little bit more of an interesting level for buyers. So if price does shoot down into that level, if you're very bullish on the dollar Swiss, there could be some trade setups there just going with that pullback. However, I like dollar yen a little bit more than dollar Swiss at this time, just because this one seems like it hasn't really even had as much of a chance for pullbacks, and the movements have just not been so decisive. But that's just my opinion. I prefer to short the yen by the dollar. And so if that setup comes up, then absolutely we'll be looking at it. AUD USD, another interesting one, a very, very pivotal day for the Aussie against the US dollar, because we are at a major, major level of support, and watching this news spike could give us the push to either clear this level to jump back up and make a move back up to this point here, which is one scenario that would be worth watching. This would come off of the back of weak US dollar news, which could drive the Aussie up, relatively speaking. And then you have the other side of things. If US dollar news comes out bullish, we could start to see something very interesting on Aussie dollar versus the US dollar, which is basically, hey, if we get a break through this level, this could be the start to a bigger sort of move there on the Aussie. So I'm not going to sort of try and assume that this trend is over or anything like that, but we have seen, this uptrend sort of come to a pause, right? So the Aussie was just this year's absolute winner. The Australian dollar and the New Zealand dollar, they have performed incredibly well this year. So you can see here is, the start to 2021 is right. I guess it's right around here. So far, it's had a really flat year this year. But last year, it just absolutely had a crazy, crazy year. So here's January. We spiked down really bad on the Aussie. Had some tough trades there myself. And then price reversed and sort of just continued to rally as the Australian economy bounced back strong. Again, what I'm watching for on today's release is to see if there is any major movements that could break this uptrend for good, right? So we've entered into this sideways trend, and it's dangerously approaching the idea of becoming sort of a short-term downtrend, which could lead to, the technical traders pushing this thing lower. So the idea is that if price breaks out to the downside, that could be off of the back of bullish US dollar news. And again, this is why the news matters, because the U.S. can give you, or not the U.S., but news in general can give the U.S. dollar the conviction, the news catalyst, the driving force to push price one way or the other. And we're not talking about pushing it. Sometimes these news releases, yes, they can spike 50 pips, but they can also move 500 pips in the next week, right? So those are the things that I'm looking for as a trader. I'm looking for those moves that could last multiple hundreds of pips for the next week or so, or 2 weeks, right? So keeping all these things in mind, again, a spike to the downside on AUD/USD, watching for this move could lead, if you're a bear on the Aussie dollar, I think that would be sort of a setup that could be worth looking at. I know, I think Bart inside of our community, he writes for us on the website as well. I read his article and he was sort of bearish for the time being on the AUD/USD. If we get that break to the downside, very well could be some great setups for him and others who are trading the Aussie dollar. So keep an eye on that. Let's also take a look at the NZD/USD. This one also struggling against the US dollar right now, sort of on a pause. Although this one's even done better recently than the Aussie, just based on this recent price action. But you can also see sort of just a sideways trend since the start of 2021. But keeping an eye on the NZD/USD today is also going to be interesting, because same thing with the Aussie dollar. If we get super bullish news for the US dollar, it could drive price right through the bottom of this thing and create some of those technical trade setups for the next week or so. So keep an eye on that. I think it does have the possibility to do something like that if the news comes out as a big miss or super unexpected bullish for the US dollar. So just keep an eye on that. One thing to also say is that the flip side could also occur. If we got really bad news for the US dollar, then this trend on NZD/USD and on AUD/USD could be headed right back to the highs. So that's why it matters. It matters because it sets the tone for potential movements in the next week or so. So that's why I want to get you guys on the same page with that going into this. Let me check some of the comments. Can we look at dollar yen? We looked at dollar yen just a little bit ago, Sir Aswan. You can go back in time, just rewind the stream a bit. I talked about it just a few minutes ago. Is the NFP announcement made live on television? Yes, it is, but we also have access to it just from forexfactory.com. They just released the data numbers here. So I'm not going to be watching the release. I care more just about seeing the numbers because usually on the TV they just say like, oh, the numbers came out as this. So I just like to see it from this. But again, like I said, beginning of the stream, the concept here is that a forecast of 652,000 jobs has come out. Watching for a big miss could lead to some excellent trade setups and ideas going into the rest of this week, if not even into next week. So that's what we're thinking. And again, NFP numbers, if they come out, the big thing we're looking for is a big miss. Because if things come out just as expected, you got to remember that price before the news is sort of pricing in what they think is going to happen. So you can see here in on the New Zealand dollar on the 1 hour chart, check this out. Price has sort of just been trailing back up. So arguably you could say that some investors, some traders think that the US dollar could come out as bearish numbers, right? So you can see there's sort of a trail up, which means people are moving into the New Zealand and out of the US dollar, right? So keep an eye on that. What about, we looked at pound dollar, we looked at euro dollar, we looked at dollar yen. We got to talk about gold before the release, that's for sure. And gold is definitely going to be an interesting topic here for people who keep an eye on it. So gold really making things confusing for us here. We have this double bottom potentially, and we do see that this downtrend is on the verge of either breaking to the upside or moving lower. And I think that this is a really, really key moment for gold. So let me see. All right, 4 hour chart. So yes, we have this downtrend, right? Sellers are overall in control for the time being. However, it looks like price is breaking out, but sort of poking through. So this is not necessarily like a full-blown reversal yet or anything like that. However, again, where the news comes in today, why it matters is because if the US dollar news comes out as very bearish, we could see something like this. Let me erase this. Yeah, so if the news comes out as very bearish for the US dollar, and we get that move to the downside on the dollar, that could mean bullishness for gold, right? So bullishness for gold could mean a breakthrough here, and there could be something like this, right? A move back to some of these major resistance levels. I think this is where our technicals come in, because if the fundamentals come out and it's a bearish bias for the dollar, then bulls on gold could see continuation. However, the flip side is also worth talking about. If things come out as very bullish for the US dollar, that could be bearish for gold, right? We've seen some pretty strong sell pressure each time price starts to rally. So as we come into this news level or this supply level, as well as the news that's coming out, it's going to be worth noting that price totally could, if we get bullish news on the dollar, I think you'd probably see a nice move back down to the previous low. And that, to me, is also worth talking about, because if price goes back down to the previous low and this trend just kind of keeps going and the fundamentals stay strong for the downside, then we could even break through and continue this downtrend to the next level. So these are the things to think about. So watching these numbers will give ideas as to how bullish or how bearish the US dollar is and what that could mean for the next week or so. Again, good numbers, good bullish numbers in the terms of new jobs created. That's great, because it could mean stronger GDP numbers coming out, which is, again, good for the economy, or it shows that the economy is growing. And a growing economy, if it grows quickly, could even introduce a hike in interest rates. And the reason that the higher interest rates matters is right now we're at 0 to 0.25% in the US. If they were to spike that even just to 1% or 0.5%, you would have a drastic move into the US dollar, which is very, very bullish. And the reason they spike interest rates is to sort of slow growth, which sounds weird, but when they spike interest rates, it's to sort of pause growth. They don't want it to grow too quickly, because there's a healthy level of growth in any sort of economy. I am by no means an economics professional or anything like that, but the basics there are that obviously we don't want a declining economy, but we also don't want a economy that is growing too quickly. We want healthy growth. And so the Fed, central banks, will usually try and hike rates in an economy that is sort of growing quickly to sort of slow growth just a bit, and also to keep things steady. So all of these things play into each other's hand, because if we have good jobs numbers, good for GDP, possibly good for inflation, good inflation, possibly due for a hike in interest rates. Okay, so that's the big picture. That's why these numbers really matter from just a basic viewpoint. Again, in terms of technical setups, if price were to get bullish here, I think retests of this level could be really worth watching for. Also, you've got that trend line there, as it looks like it's sort of trying to break out to the upside here. Keeping that in mind as a potential rebound or retest level could be worth doing. We got 4 minutes, you guys, until the news release happens. We will see if there's any sort of lasting impact on the US dollar, if there's anything strong. So let's keep that in mind. We'll come back to gold in just a moment, but let's do our last one, which is going to be USD CAD here. Just a few minutes before the release. We've got 3 minutes before we go. You can see USD CAD sort of pulling back here, giving back some of its gains before. Again, lots of bearishness on the US dollar sort of leading up into the news release, which is definitely worth noting, because that could lead to, hey, people are thinking it's going to be bearish. Let's see what the numbers actually come out. Again, about 3 minutes here, a little less than 3 minutes before the news actually comes out. And again, we'll keep an eye on things on Forex Factory to see what the numbers come out. And as you guys know, I won't be trading the spike itself, but we'll talk about, like I said, all these trade ideas and setups that the news could bring. So keep an eye on that. I think short-term bears watching dollar CAD, watching for the retest of this level could be interesting. So stay tuned on that to see what the spike comes out as. About 2 more minutes, you guys, until the news releases. You guys are a little bit behind me, so it might be less than now. But again, keep an eye on some of these US dollar crosses. We'll see what things bring. We already took a look at dollar yen, but again, so just seeing what things are doing right before the news. We'll drop it down to the 15-minute chart just to see what the spike looks like. It's always fun to see. And we will go from there. Let's see if we can look at, we'll pull up dollar CAD for this. All right, so dollar CAD is the one we'll watch. How many candles do you take into consideration on each time frame? I don't really think of that. I just sort of look at like this many, whatever is on the screen right now. You know, sometimes like this many, whatever this is. Does that make sense? Just want to say thank you. You're very welcome. Thanks for being here. Thanks all of you guys for being here. I hope you're enjoying the stream. We got this spike happening very soon. Let's see what the numbers actually bring, and then we'll go take a look and see how it's impacting some of the charts. So stay with me. Just waiting for the spike now. Got about 40 seconds here on my clock down here at the bottom. So we'll see what the news brings. Is it on? Not just yet. It's about to be. We're about to see the news spike at 8:30 U.S. Eastern. And we'll see if there's any sort of lasting impact going into the U.S. dollar. Again, thank you guys very much for joining me on the stream here. I hope you are enjoying it so far. And feel free to come back anytime. We do these Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. U.S. Eastern usually. So, yeah, let's see what this spike, or if there is a spike here on the U.S. dollar today for NFP. Coming in right now. All right, NFP numbers coming out. No major spikes yet. We got a little bit of bullishness here on the U.S. dollar. Let's see if we can refresh this and see if the numbers came out already. Look at that. We got a beat on the U.S. dollar here, on the U.S. unemployment. We got more jobs than expected. 916,000 new jobs created. That is fantastic. The unemployment rate here still staying at 6%. We'll go take a look, and there it is. We got a little bit of a spike here for the U.S. dollar. That is bullish for the dollar today. For those of you guys who are dollar bulls, nice. I hope you got some of that move. Not the biggest spike or anything like that, but good numbers nonetheless for the U.S. And this could be impacting some of the other charts as well. Look at that spike. That was a nasty little spike there on dollar yen. Let's take a look at pound dollar as well, see what happened there. So we did get a spike to the downside. Looks like, did we get something else that I'm missing here? Yeah, so a little bit of, so the average hourly earnings went down. That's impactful because it's a leading indicator of consumer inflation. When businesses pay more for labor, the higher costs are usually based on to the consumer, or passed on to the consumer. Okay, so we got a little bit of mixed sentiment here. So we did get more jobs created. We got a less than expected average hourly earnings, and we have a flat unemployment rate. So this spike to me looks like it kind of makes sense that it just sort of is back and forth. However, lots of new jobs created for the U.S. So this sort of looks like a mixed sentiment. What is gold doing? Gold doing anything interesting here? Gold still poking its head up, still staying strong against the U.S. dollar here for the time being. Gold's not doing anything. Yeah, not too much of a spike. And again, this is usually what we're watching for in the news, because sometimes you get news that is heavily unexpected, and sometimes you get sort of something like this, which is mixed, right? Because this is bullish, this is bearish, and this is flat. So you're not going to see a massive spike today. However, you know, if this were to be the other case, like if we were to get, you know, a hit, and a hit, or like better than expected on all three, then absolutely could see the U.S. dollar incredibly bullish. But we're seeing sort of just a mixed reaction to it, just because some of the numbers here that came out are sort of They're sort of so-so. Gold market is closed today. Is it? Oh, it's not moving due to Good Friday. That's right. Interesting. The dollar Swiss as well, sort of moving up a little bit. There's not too much here to grab onto. Let's see. Is dollar CAD do anything? Dollar CAD is spiked a little bit there and sort of stayed flat. Okay, so not the biggest moves, not the most impressive moves. What about the NAS 100? Somebody says the NAS 100 is moving. Let's look at that. Yep, still pushing higher here is the NAS 100, which is really interesting. Check US 30. Sure, we'll take a look at US 30 as well. This is the Dow. Look at that. The Dow pushing higher there today. That actually did cause more of a spike on the indices than anywhere else. You can see a nice move higher there as we broke through this previous top. And again, this is what I mean. Sometimes you get these news releases that give just enough pressure to push through a major level. So obviously we had some supply here on US 30. Price popped through that level and sort of did so off the back of news. What about SPX? Anything here? Yep, also seeing some bullish push here today on the S&P, which is good for those of you guys who hold stocks. Definitely seeing some move there. What about the DXY just in general? So DXY is moving up a little bit here off of that news today. It's nothing ginormous, but again, this is what happens with NFP. Sometimes you get big movers, sometimes you don't. And so today is not a big mover. It's more of just a so-so move. Again, because based on what we see here, we sort of have mixed sentiment. We have numbers that are not as good, and flat. So we probably wouldn't expect any sort of major spikes. Euro Aussie. Let's take a look at Euro USD. Okay, yeah, let's look at that. See if there's anything there. Euro USD is showing some rejection here. Again, this is it still seems like it's being perceived as bullish for the US dollar, right? Because that is a lot of new jobs created. I mean, they forecasted 652,000 and then it came out as 900,000 jobs. I mean, that's pretty good figures in terms of, you know, that's the second month in a row, or the second reporting in the row that was more jobs than expected, which is good. New jobs are good. However, the average hourly earnings, let's go take a look at this again. This matters too because it's a change in price businesses pay for labor, excluding the farming industry. So jobs are one of the biggest inflationary sort of things. It's understanding how much are employers paying, because if they're paying more or paying less, that sort of shows signs of inflation, right? So that's why they're checking that. Again, you can see it says why traders care. It's a leading indicator of a consumer inflation. When businesses pay more for labor, the higher costs are usually passed on to the consumer. Inflationary, right? So when businesses pay more for labor, that's more inflationary. So yes, very, very much worth keeping an eye on those numbers as well. So sort of, like I said, mixed sentiment. By the way, you guys, thank you so much for being here. We've got 842 people hanging out live with us. I appreciate you showing up and being a part of today's live stream. We went through a bunch of different things. And this is, again, the point is, although, yes, the spike wasn't dramatic or wasn't anything crazy, keeping an eye on these US dollar releases or any sort of major economic release is a part of fundamental analysis in my view. Look at this. Now the Euro USD is reversing. Now it's just playing head games with us because we did get a spike to the downside and then we sort of reversed it real quick. Let's look at the 1 hour chart again. So again, we spiked down on the euro somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 pips or so, and then we regained all of that right away. So I'm seeing people saying the like train. We'll do the like train in just a moment, you guys. Stay tuned for that. Look at that. Now Euro USD really reversing. What's going on here, you guys? Let's take a look at gold. I bet gold is also pushing higher right now. I keep forgetting gold is closed. Sorry, you guys. I just April Fools myself. What about dollar Swiss, dollar yen, anything else moving? It seems like the euro is getting a bump, though. Euro USD just did something. Yeah, it spiked 20 pips or so. What about AUD USD? AUD USD also spiked as well. NZD, I bet, did. Yeah, look at that. New Zealand dollar catching a bounce there. Strong. Something's happening. But again, sort of mixed sentiment on the U.S. dollar today. So not a dominant news release or anything like that one way or the other. So, but I think that this does, going back to our concept here on the 4-hour chart on New Zealand dollar and AUD USD, it does look like this could be a potential bottoming for these pairs, especially when we look at it from a bigger picture standpoint. We see, pretty strong levels of demand previously in this zone. As we retested this zone, we did consolidate, but it's looking like we have maybe the legs here to move higher and to push out of this zone here on the low side on New Zealand dollar. Same thing, like I said, with AUD USD as well. So watching to see if we can sort of clear these zones. I think if you start to see breakouts of these areas, there could be sort of something like this move back to that previous level that we talked about. So keep an eye on that when it comes to AUD and NZD versus the dollar. USD CAD moving as well. Let's jump into that. Yeah, USD CAD dropping a little bit here. Again, very, very mixed sentiment spike. We got a spike to the upside there of 13 pips, and then now we dropped 20 pips. So sometimes this is also something you see happen with the news. And again, this is, it's always interesting as well because sometimes news comes out and it's mixed, so then you just get these back and forths as people try and value the currency, right? And that's what's happening is news hits the floor, data hits the floor, sentiment sort of changes, and then people are sort of pricing this in. So trading the spike can be quite the rough ride, if you will. Yeah, so dollar CAD moving a little bit lower here. Boneless Vegan said, making money right now, doubled my account off of one trade. Boneless Vegan, congrats on doubling your money, but I will say this. Doubling money in trading in a short period of time is much closer to gambling. And I'm not going to try and say like, oh, you just got lucky or anything like that. But going all in on a trade is what usually has to happen for you to double an account in a short period of time. And going all in is one of the fastest ways long-term to blow your account completely. So please be careful to anybody who makes drastic money very quickly. Real traders, successful traders, they would be very happy to have a couple percent gained on their account in a single day. If you double your account in a single day, you're taking giant risk, most likely, that long-term could completely destroy you. So please be careful. I'm not trying to call you out or anything. I'm just trying to warn you because there's a lot of people who they make some quick money in the markets. They think they're hot, and then they blow everything because they keep doing what they did to make that money, thinking that it's going to keep working, and long story short, doesn't always work. Starfighter, I've seen your question a couple times. You're asking if you should close a position and place a sell on euro dollar again, or instead. I'm not going to tell you what you should do with your money on my streams. Basically, I just share my thoughts and my analysis. Right now, I'm overall bearish on the euro dollar, but I'm not going to say like, oh, go sell it right now at this current level. Like, I think you should make your own decisions. I think you should have a trade set up for yourself. You should not be looking for somebody else to give you those setups because, again, I know I come across as like, oh, don't be lazy. I'm trying to be harsh. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to talk to you guys about the things that actually make a difference in people who are trying to get successful at this stuff. So many people get caught up trying to copy signals and trying to look for cheat codes or easy ways to make quick money in the markets, and it is such a dangerous game. You guys, you don't see my DMs. My DMs are very, very they're great, and they're also very sad sometimes when I get these messages from people who are like, I just blew everything on some news release, or I don't know what to do. Do I buy this thing? Should I close out my positions? My job is not to tell you guys, oh yeah, close your position, or oh yeah, open a position. That's not what I'm here to do. My thought is I'm a trader. I do my own trades, and you should too. These streams are me sharing my thoughts and my analysis for you to take as you will and to hopefully learn something and go actually sort of test and employ these things yourself. I'm not here, like I said, to give you answers to what you should do in your account. And Phil also made a good comment. He said I would call it a day in the week with a nice profit and start trading next week with a good mind. Yeah, so I think that's another thing to think about is is if you're having a good week or you're having a bad week, there's nothing wrong with taking a pause and stepping away from the markets as well. It's actually probably a really good skill to use. All right, guys, I think it's time. I think it is time for the like train. We've got 763 people here. We had a fantastic stream talking about the NFP data. Although it wasn't the biggest spike, it had some really good, interesting setups that we talked about throughout the stream. And we talked about how this could actually impact the markets going into the next week or so. US dollar news was a little bit so-so, a little bit mixed. So we don't have a strong, decisive thing, but we did talk about some levels that if things start to get moving again, we could see some key levels come into play. Anyways, it's time for the like train. What we do on this stream is I basically, instead of just begging you for likes, I draw you a great train. It's the like train. And if you support the stream, if you enjoy it, please make sure to like it down below. These videos are completely free. I don't ask for anything except for your likes, in which I'm going to draw you a nice train to show you how much I appreciate you guys being here a part of the stream. So I'm going to do my best to draw you guys a quick train, and then we will go from there. All right, here is today's like train. We'll put a like on it. Like I said, if you enjoy the stream, make sure to like it down below. It does really help just to grow the channel and to share this message with more people who are out there trying to get better at their trading and see something for free. You don't have to go spend a bunch of money on an expensive course or anything like that, but just tune into our streams and hang out with us in the future. All right, so here's the conductor holding on to the train. So yes, there is our like train for the day, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. How many likes can we get in there? Wow, we jumped like crazy. Thank you guys. That's awesome. We just went from like 200 to 300 in just like a second. So thank you so much. Jump on the like train, get in there. We'll put some of you guys in the back here. I don't know what kind of rail car that is, but it's something. There we go. And there you guys are on the like train. And there we go. Awesome. Thank you guys very much for being here, for being part of today's stream. I do really enjoy doing these and hanging out with you guys, sharing my thoughts and ideas. Gives me a good chance just to go through my own analysis and thought process in the market and share it with you. So feel free to join us on any other day during the week. We do Monday through Friday. We do live streams and we just go through markets. We talk about trade ideas and setups. And I try and just drop the tips and stuff that I've learned over my time as a trader. So thank you so much for being here and supporting what we do. Jack Rose says, your drawing is perfect. Thank you. I knew it was perfect. You didn't have to tell me. I knew it was a perfect drawing and that nobody can draw a better train than me. Yeah, anyways, you guys, that's going to wrap it up for me. Got some stuff I need to do here in the office before the weekend. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Happy Friday to you. Spend some time with family if you can. Spend some time with friends and enjoy your weekend. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you back next week. What's up, you guys? I'm so excited to announce that TradingView is going to be sponsoring our content here on YouTube. TradingView.com offers a wide range of trading software and charting tools, and they are my #1 favorite place for everything charts. I've been using them myself for years, so it's very easy for me to get behind TradingView.com. On top of all of their fantastic charting software, they also have a vibrant community of traders with millions of active users. You can join in on some of the conversations going on there, as well as access some of the research and ideas being shared by fellow members. Whether you use Bollinger Bands, using moving averages, or pattern trading, whatever you do, TradingView has so many different tools and even the ability to program your own custom tools right inside of their platform. One of my favorite things about TradingView personally is that I can take my laptop anywhere I want. I can access my TradingView.com account, and then I can log into it from my phone or a different computer and still have all of my charts loaded, which is fantastic and super convenient for being in different places like myself, where I have different charts that I am looking at. Recently, some of the nice people over at TradingView set me up with a pro version of their platform, and it is fantastic. I encourage you though, if you haven't already signed up for a TradingView account, sign up for one for free. There's a link down below in the description to try it out. And hey, if you really like it, try out their pro version. They're supporting the content that you guys see here and making it all possible. So a big shout out to TradingView, and go check them out if you haven't already.